Hello and welcome. My name's Steve Pugh, and if you've never seen any of these before, I try and do every Monday at 4 o'clock. I try and introduce you to interesting people that can help your business or career. And then today, I also like to pick people that I kind of know through, lots of different ways and forums and backgrounds and careers and different stuff. I'm going to introduce you to Tom. And basically, we've both worked in the offshore wind sector, or actually the offshore energy sector for quite a long time, that I thought would be a really super interesting guest to have on. He's also a marketer by background again, so I think we might touch on some of that kind of stuff as well. So actually, Tom, I'm just going to bring you in and then hopefully we can have a nice chat. So there we go. So everyone can now see you and hear you. Would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hi everyone, great to be here. Thanks Stephen for the invite.
No problem. And it's just what I always love doing. It's the whole point of now with kind of video and podcast and live streaming and stuff. It's the chance to almost share good news stories as messages and stuff about events and people and organizations, or even like whole industries like offshore wind, in a way that, I don't know, 5 years ago, you had to attend a conference. You know what I mean? It's a whole new medium that I think is really cool to kind of share. And then especially with stuff that I think will benefit people, but they might not know about it yet, I think is quite cool as well. So if you're happy to, would you happy to almost give us a quick, little bit of background on yourself before we delve a bit deeper into your story?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Tom Nightingale and I'm the North East Stakeholder Manager for Equinor. I'm based in Newcastle, and I've lived in Newcastle actually since I came to Newcastle at the age of 18 to go to Northumbria University, and I just decided to stay in the region, and that's really how I first got into the energy industry. But in terms of my life in Newcastle, I live in Holystone, and I live with my wife and 2 kids, and we got a dog in lockdown as well, like a lot of people.
No.
We've done most new lockdown initiatives. That was one of many, including the garden.
No, nice. So where are you from originally?
So I'm from Leeds. I grew up in Leeds. So I lived in a place called Beeston in Leeds until I was about 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quite a deprived area. My mum and dad worked really hard to try and get us to another area. We moved when I was 11 to a place in between Leeds and Wakefield. Called Robin Hood, actually.
Fair enough. No, it's just because I always like to almost touch on people's backgrounds and a bit more of their story, just because, again, if people ever watch this, the more you kind of know and you get a vibe. Obviously, you're a marketer, you understand this, but the more people understand about you and your background and your culture and what you're from and stuff, is that, people will kind of relate to it as well, which is hopefully quite cool. But today we're here to talk about offshore wind and offshore energy. I think what would be quite interesting is almost to share, if you're happy to, how you almost got into the industry. Is that cool? Because I think there'll be a lot of people out there that, historically people would always think oil and gas, big money, doing this and this. Not always the case, but actually people are genuinely interested in how to do it. So what did you do at uni?
So actually at university, I studied a degree called Computing for Business. It's very different to what I actually do now. But my dad was an IT teacher. And so computers was always something quite big in our house. I wouldn't say that I was massively interested, but I knew that it was like a good industry to try and get into, which is why I chose that path.
Fair enough. So what was your first job? I'm just trying to almost go through the steps.
So my first job after university, when I graduated, me and my friends all decided that we wouldn't go back to where we were from. We would just try and carry on the student lifestyle. And we all just started applying for jobs in the area. And I applied to a company called Duco Limited, which is now Technip FMC, their umbilical division. But I didn't really think about the fact that I was getting into energy or oil and gas. I was thinking more about manufacturing, actually.
Okay.
And this opportunity came up to work in IT with process engineers and to help them automate their processes and build spreadsheets and databases that helped them to become more efficient in their jobs.
No, cool. I must say, it's funny actually. Do you think it's quite common that when people apply for jobs, they finish uni, or even because it's generally the year before you actually finish, you start looking for jobs and applying for stuff. I think it's funny that I think for a lot of, so I did engineering, but a lot of the people I was with, you look at arguably salary first. Does the business look quite cool? And arguably that was it. You know what I mean? There wasn't too much thought that kind of went past that. And I'm just always interested about what people do, because again, this kind of spins out to, I guess, some of your kind of more recent roles, is that when you then, it's part of the selling the dream for the business, that can have a massive impact all the way through to recruitment and retention and that kind of thing. So I'm always interested in how people kind of get started. And then what did you do after JUCO?
Well, actually, I'll just mention something I did before, because you did ask me what my first job was. And
Yes.
when I was at university, we did a sandwich degree. So I did a 1 year professional placement. And actually, I was doing IT, but I was doing it for the marketing department at Procter and Gamble.
Oh, nice.
And so I got quickly quite interested in marketing then. And that was, a big influence, I think, to how I sort of navigated in my career further on. But I was doing things related to IT that helped marketers. So at the time, it was things like, targeting people's postcodes if they lived around a Sainsbury's, and we wanted to target them with, a washing powder or something like this. So that it was sort of using data at the time and analysis to try and home in on people's demographics and lifestyles to try and target the right products at them.
No, cool. And then you had, at what point did you go to JDR?
Well, so I did 10 years at Technip FMC first.
Wow.
So it was actually a huge amount of time before I left, and I did 5 different roles when I was at Technip FMC. So this role I mentioned before that I started with the process engineers only lasted a year, and I think I was going on all of the work nights out and getting myself really well known in the business, and they were just setting up a new team to sort of sell all the ancillary products of the business. And I think that they just thought, especially with my IT skills and my personality, that I'd be a good fit there to sort of manage a lot of small accounts and work with a lot of other businesses who were buying things like loose hose and end fittings and other products from us, not the traditional main umbilical product that the sort of big tendering team were selling.
Yeah, but
and then, sorry.
No, I've always going to say that, but it's always nice when you're at an organisation that recognises talent, because that's always the classic thing, isn't it? It's just that you have so many people out there that you feel like you want to progress and do stuff and do cool stuff, but if you're not in an organisation which almost recognises that, it can be quite difficult to get that promotion or get that even inspiration to stay somewhere for 10 years, which is pretty cool. So it's a good sign.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the first things that happened when I moved into this new department is that they said, we're going to give you this role, but really you're not qualified for it. So let's work through some training with different milestones. So that was when I did my first qualification with the Chartered Institute of Marketing, which was a certificate in professional sales. Actually, it wasn't marketing, it was sales. But then I also actually did a HNC in engineering, so I went every Thursday for a full day, and that was to improve my technical skills and knowledge as well, to help me with the sales of these products. But after that, I moved into marketing, and I was doing more market research and analysis, and that's been a big theme throughout my career, really looking at from a supply chain perspective who your competition is and how you can be better than them, and what is different. What's the value proposition that you have compared to them? So that led me through a few roles there, where I actually worked in and lived in Oslo for a year as well.
Wow.
So that was an amazing experience. I worked for Technip Norway, it was at the time.
Was it as expensive as everyone says?
Yeah, but I got an absolutely fantastic secondment deal. I have to admit, it was really great. So I learned to ski and had some nice holidays, and my now wife was able to come with me, but she couldn't really find work there. So, it was fine because, the extra pay I was getting for being there was covering us both. So it was a really great experience for me, actually.
Because I've heard rumours of £40 hot dogs at oil and gas conferences and stuff that is just bonkers.
Well, I'm not sure that's anything I ever saw, but, it was very expensive. And the biggest disaster about the whole thing is you didn't even get a full pint for this amount of money. It was half a litre.
Of course.
So that was not good news when you were paying £7 a pint, or not a pint.
So we're here today to talk about offshore wind. It's funny that before we jump into it, because I think it's something that we both know quite a lot about, but actually I think it's a really interesting, cool topic, which is topical for a lot of people. Would you like to tell people almost what you're doing now and why that relates to what we're talking about? Is that cool? Just kind of set the scene.
Yeah. Well, a big part of offshore wind at the moment is trying to help the UK meet its net zero targets and decarbonisation. And I've been fortunate enough to get this role with Equinor recently. And Equinor's a partner in building the world's largest offshore wind farm, which is Dogger Bank. And one of the reasons that I've been able to move into this role is because having worked for Technip for 10 years, I then left there to go and do a much more communication and PR role at Deep Ocean. And after a year working there, I then moved to JDR, which you mentioned previously. And JDR was a big competitor of Technip FMC for the umbilical product, but was also just moving into products for offshore wind. And my role in marketing enabled me to build quite a big network. And in fact, a few people that I'm working with now in Equinor, I knew during that time at JDR as well. So I did 4 years at JDR where I was the marketing and strategy manager. And during that time, JDR was a bit of a flagship company for offshore wind in the UK, working for companies like Equinor, but also working and selling lots of product overseas as well. So, lots of the sort of DIT teams really interested in companies like JDR to go and wave the flag of offshore wind in overseas markets as well. And now we're seeing such huge growth in offshore wind. Some really big targets being set as part of the 10-point plan by the UK government. I actually left the industry and went back to oil and gas for a little bit, but now I'm back here and really enjoying it, to be honest. It's amazing to come and work for a company like Equinor and sit on the developer's side of the table for the first time in my career, having been in the supply chain for the rest of the time.
No, that's cool. But I think what also helps is the fact that you have been in the supply chain. It almost helps you understand how things work. And JDR are a really good kind of flagship company that, it's not that many people that make cables. Like, there are a few, but they're, just a really good organization to work for. And again, like, you've got Mandy Maroney, what's quite funny, because all of the companies that you've mentioned, we all know people that work in all the companies. And it's such a small, I'm not going to say it's incestuous, but it's a small industry, but in a good way that you kind of get to know good people, and hopefully the good people stick around and stuff. And that's quite cool. So offshore wind in general, I think just to kind of go a bit wider, so carbon emissions globally are kind of going up. People are looking at alternative energy sources of, how do you get your power and stuff. And then there's also the element of localization. So obviously you have populations and where the population density is, and there's a lot of nuance that goes into how you try and figure out where you get your energy from. But then you're looking at your net zero stuff and how do you do it. And again, one of the big drivers for the UK, I'm just setting the scene here, Tom, is how do you get your power from, and also energy security, so that we protect our own power as opposed to getting it from Russia or China or wherever, because you never know what's going to happen. So even when I used to work public sector, which was like 10, 12 years ago, I was part of the team, ironically, very early doors to promote England for Dogger Bank, which is why I think it was quite kind of cool to actually see it kind of come through. But it's almost, for you, what's your feel or Equinor's feel on the potential for offshore wind and what this can mean for the UK?
So I think that the offshore wind is going to play a significant part in the energy mix. Obviously, it's growing all the time. And, we need to have less reliance on other forms of energy generation. There's also other opportunities down the line with offshore wind as well, like electrolysis for hydrogen production. So it can actually play a role in other areas too. But I think that you talked a little bit there about security of supply and being in the cables industry. There's also, I'm familiar a lot with things like interconnectors now. So we could also... Do you want to explain to people what
interconnectors are? Because not everyone will know.
So interconnectors are huge, long cables that connect between countries, and it allows you to share power. So we could have a day where the wind blows very heavily and Norway needs some additional power, for example, and then you can send power via interconnection. And one of the things that's happening a lot now is lots of different companies are getting connected together via these long interconnector cables. And that also helps with security of supply and intermittence and being able to share power too.
Yeah, cool. But I think it's funny because as a marketer, one of the big things that you'll know almost as like social trends is the desire to go green, to purchase green. And that goes down to people's, even when you buy your power, like I've got a hemp bag just on the floor down there, but it's almost, there's a lot of different decisions that people can make, from the t-shirts that they buy, the food and the fruit that they get. do they even, I was in Sainsbury's at lunchtime, they've now stopped giving away the little bags that you put your onions in when you put them into the basket. And it's all these little things, but actually power generation and the use of energy is a massive, massive thing that actually is really important. And but it's really interesting just to see companies transition between. So previously to being Equinor, was Equinor Statoil? Am I correct? Oh, I got that wrong.
Yeah, that's correct.
And in the same way that, I guess, are Ørsted a competitor or just a friendly rival?
Well, when it comes to bidding for leases and during licensing rounds, then companies sometimes partner together. On Dogger Bank, we're working as part of a joint venture with SSE and ENI on the first 2 phases and SSE on the 3rd phase. So you can work together, definitely, but then you bid against many other companies. So Ørsted, I guess, is definitely a competitor. Yeah.
Where I was going with that is the fact that they also rebranded, because it's the whole culture and everything that you portray behind the company, almost to buy into, to say to the world, look, we are transitioning for renewables. So, and it's a really kind of nice move. So would you like to tell people specifically about Dogger Bank?
Yeah, so Dogger Bank's going to be 3.6 gigawatts in total, which is huge. That basically means that it'll be able to power up to 6 million homes. And it features a lot of world firsts as well. It's a really advanced and innovative project, and it's been built off the coast of North East England. So it's over 130 kilometres out into the ocean. It covers the size of Greater London. And we're basically going to have 277 turbines, offshore wind, very large structures out there generating lots of power. And that'll all be connecting back actually in the East Riding of Yorkshire and in Teesside to the national grid.
Oh, cool. Is it 3.6 for the whole thing, or is that just for one of the phases?
That's for the whole thing. So it's 1.2 gigawatts per phase.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And just for anyone that doesn't know, so basically Dogger Bank is also, it's the name for the area of land where this is built, because one of the big things that you almost saw when you make offshore structures is you need it to be far away from shore enough that you have fast wind, but shallow enough that you can build, because the different types of foundations are changing, that you can actually build on it. And there just happens to be this patch of land off the coast, which is perfect for offshore wind. Because one of the big things, almost from the UK's perspective, I think we've got 40% of Europe's wind resource. Kind of helps that we're an island, but it's brilliant for technologies like offshore winds, just because it allows us to generate power close to Newcastle, close to big cities, and actually use something that we're really good at, which then we can export. So it's great for developers, people actually kind of championing it and doing it. And I think behind your head, is this the new offshore base? I know you can't see it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. So this is the operations and maintenance base that we're going to be building at the Port of Tyne. Port of Tyne's where we've selected to build the base, and it's a great location in the clean energy park. So we're about to start construction at the moment. This is just a nice graphic, but eventually it will be the big warehouse behind me. And it'll be where our service operation vessels come to reload and recrew, and then they'll take the wind turbine technicians offshore, and they'll work offshore for 2 weeks at a time. So very similar to oil and gas in that sort of offshore rotation, because it's so far out to sea.
Cool. So in your job title, and please correct me, so it's North East Stakeholder Manager.
Yeah.
One of the big things is all about supply chain, because when we talk about offshore wind and obviously the scale of the opportunity and stuff that we're kind of looking at, there's going to be a lot of people that almost want to get involved. And I just didn't know do you have any portals that people can look at, or web links, or just general information?
Yeah, so it's so the role really covers the supply chain, things like academia, training in facilities as well. Also the community. So we've got a really nice community fund that we announced recently as well. And from a supply chain perspective, any supplier in offshore wind or in energy or even outside of those areas can go and register at doggerbank.com if they want to be part of the project. So we have a supplier portal there. But we also recognise that there's lots of other ways that we can engage with the supply chain, like this, for example. People can find out about what we're doing. So we're working with organisations like Invest South Tyneside, like RTC North as well, so that we can target and access all different sizes of supply chain companies. And I think we work probably most closely at the moment with NOF and Energy Coast. And Energy Coast really represents the whole of the offshore wind industry in North East England, and has really been a big champion of offshore wind as a cluster. And that's something that Equinor has always supported and been part of as well, because we recognise the importance of trying to advance the industry in the region on the back of projects like Dogger Bank as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
So we do lots and lots of work in collaboration with them, and a lot of that is focused around the supply chain and opportunities.
Yeah, cool. I was going to say it's a seamless segue, because I was going to ask you about NOF, but also the Northeast supply chain as a whole, because we've both worked in it, we both know a lot of the companies. But for people that don't know, why is the Northeast of England kind of a world leader in offshore energy?
Well, I think that it's always historically been a bit of an industrial powerhouse anyway. But with particular, oil and gas, and then moving more towards offshore wind, we've got so many ports here. We've got so many like manufacturing and fabrication facilities. So there's a really big established energy supply chain already within the region. Lots and lots of companies, and some of those companies have presences here and in many other countries as well. But there's definitely a specific concentration of manufacturing facilities, and then all of the great port infrastructure that we have here as well to help mobilise all of these products offshore. So I think, it all just has come together over the years, and we've continued to grow as a region in capabilities.
No, I think it's cool, because I think the other thing that a lot of people miss is the fact that the UK exports so much expertise. So that yes, we make stuff here, and yes, we have a lot of expertise, but we sell that all around the world. Like just today, I've dealt with customers in South Korea this morning. I'm trying to think whether Vietnam, and I can't remember where the other bid were. But we're really, really good at making stuff and making high value technical stuff that actually if you would have asked the supply chain a while back, there was generally countries that could make stuff cheaper. So India, Taiwan, wherever, China. But I think one thing that people always miss is that, especially in offshore energy stuff, when it is higher risk, higher value stuff, people will pay to have it done properly, if that makes sense. And often so much of it is down to the experience of the people sat at the computers doing CAD, doing stuff, doing the marketing, doing the branding, almost understanding the client's requirements. For me, it helps local companies be internationally competitive, because there's a big pickup in, say, the US on how we can export those skills, which definitely helps with people like DIT that I mentioned before, to really help create Northeast jobs, even if the project isn't in the Northeast coast,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's happened a lot in the oil and gas industry over the years. There's, lots and lots of companies in the Northeast of England that help contribute towards actually the Northeast being one of the biggest net exporters in the whole of the UK as a region. So it's, energy obviously plays an important role in that, but so do many other industries. But you're really right about the products and services as well. People, customers do want to work with companies who have a good product and have a long established track record and history. And there's a few, big names in the region who have been supplying to projects for years all over the world and still are in the energy industry.
Oh, cool, Tom. I've just been told that apparently my camera is frozen, which I can see that is, but there's not much I can do about it from our study here. So, Simon, I apologize. There's not much I can do, but I'm just going to carry on. And hopefully, at least for the audio part of the podcast, which is cool, I'll clip up the bits before I froze, and I can see it on my screen. These things happen. It's a first world problem, but I apologize. So, Tom, before we I think we've kind of covered most things. One of the things that I love to ask all the guests is almost if I like to pick people's brains and have them share information and stuff. If you were to pick the best piece of advice you've ever had, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it was really difficult to think about this, because one of the things that I always think about when people ask me about this is speaking to my mum, because when I left Technip FMC to join Deep Ocean is when my mum died, actually, and it was like that very weekend. And I think that without having the chance to speak to her and get her sort of approval I would never have left Technip FMC. So I'm really, really glad that we were able to sort of talk through it, and that she agreed and, accepted my decision there to do that, because I always relied heavily on her opinion for things. So I think, that's something that I always think of when I think about advice and times like that. But I've also been really lucky in my career that I've always had quite a lot of sponsors as well, which I think is really important for people. So just as an example, when I was at JDR, David Curry there was the CEO at the time, and he was, really helped me. He let me represent JDR on the Offshore Wind Industry Council in London, which meant I built up a huge network of people in the offshore wind industry that I probably wouldn't have. So he was really giving me lots of opportunities there as well. So I think it's really important to try and have people who will help you and grow your network as well.
The other question, which I always love to ask, is that if you were to give advice to your younger self, and you can pick any age, any background, any part of your career, what would it be?
Yeah, I think that for me, it's about trusting your gut and believing in yourself, really. So I think that's what I would tell my younger self. I mean, not that I look back and think I should have done things in a different way or faster, or, it's not like a regret, but I think that's what I want to make sure my kids know and, understand that if they really believe that they can do something, they should just go ahead and do it, and cut out the people who hold you back and cause negativity. I think is something that I've taken a long time to learn over the years, but it is really important, I think, so that you can focus on yourself and your family and your career, and
Cool.
make the right decisions for yourself, not for other people.
No, I think it's a brilliant one, and I think it's stuff like this, because you never know who's going to see this and if they really kind of resonate and appreciate that kind of thing as well. But cool. Well, is there anything else you would like to talk about and plug before we go?
Well, I think it's worthwhile talking a little bit about the Chartered Institute of Marketing while I'm here, because I'm also a member of the North East board of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and I think during my career, CIM has always been a really important way to grow my own skills and knowledge, and actually at the moment membership and qualifications are growing quite a lot for CIM as well. But really, it's about having a marketing network. And one of the real benefits to me of having a network through the Chartered Institute of Marketing in the region is meeting people from all other industries and companies that I would never come across through my normal business networking, which has also brought me many new, interactions and new, grown my network significantly. But you can do it also through many other different industries, and you're doing things now different to what you were doing when I first met you at Deep Ocean about 9 years ago, Steve. So it just goes to show you can move around outside of your industry as well. And a bit of a plug there for CIM and North East, because if anybody wants to engage with us, let us know, and we'll be trying to increase the number of events that we're doing post-COVID as well soon.
Cool. Well, I appreciate your time. I really do. It's been good to kind of catch up and share some of the story. I am genuinely sorry about some of the technical difficulties. It's been a pleasure to catch up. I do genuinely think that Dogger Bank it's a brilliant project. There's so much good stuff going on. I know it's really good stuff for the UK, not just Equinor's projects, but everyone's kind of projects. And then, in the future, when we start to talk about floating wind and other stuff as well, we can hopefully jump on that as well. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. It's always often good to keep things kind of short and sweet and stuff. I know we've both got kind of busy days and stuff. But no, thank you, and hopefully we'll catch up soon.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, Steve.
No worries. Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.